Hey, how y'all doing? Let's do it to it. All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into another chapter. Okay, easiness, and that's the name of it. We'll get this, not another chapter, but another section. I forgot clear the board. I'm still getting used to that one. Still getting used to that one. We're kind of getting some equivalent Asian. So, of course, this. Oops, I gotta have it be white. So this is an interesting one here, but that was just one of the things that they were talking about. This, and then we'll get into a game. So this is in a game. Of course, having easy choices of moves isn't always a good thing. The simplest position of all to play a chorus would be your king is being checked all over the board. You are forced to play the only legal moves available. Your moves are easy to find, but you're about to be checkmated on the other hand. And in this one, it says white has a huge choice. There are at least 18 moves here for white. The database says that bishop h3 is actually is best, but the other 17 are nearly as good as well. On over the next several moves, white will continue to have more than a dozen more or less equal moves. Finding the best one is difficult, but only when white is close to mate will find the best move much faster. Bottom line, the difficulty factor isn't in the slightest way basically significant in these positions. Taking the easier option makes it the biggest impact when there is more than one good candidate move and theoretically the best move. The one that is endorsed by the computer lies outside human comfort zone sometimes. So this one, they're saying that this move right here is actually the best continuation. The computer said. So, but we'll put in and get our game set up. But I wanted to show you an example of what we were talking about. How in this next section inside of easier the chapter 7. So let's get some white pawns set up. Okie dokie, let's make sure we have all this right. Okay, now we got this good so far. Okay. So I missed one pawn. Let's just go over it one more time just to make sure I'm not missing anything. I appreciate your patience. Alright. It's black to move here. we don't have to worry about castling because both the kings have already moved. So that solves a lot of our problems here. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you on. Get Oh, good. Getting ready for Christmas? I'm excited. Okay. Yep. That's good. See, we're thinking the same. The joke is we're in the Team Chess Cruncher zone. One sec, gotta get a sip, then we'll get started. Okay, let's see what black has here for positional play on the easiest equivalent. So basically, it means easy equal. Is it basically? That's kind of some of his chapters of Andrew Solstice are really interesting named, but they're straight to the point for sure. So black has sacrificed a pawn. Black has already sacrificed a pawn to obtain his queenside attack. Wait a sec. Did I? Yeah, that's right. Because if yeah, he did. That's right. The a pawn got sacrificed. His a pawn got sacrificed. So this is actually a passed a pawn, which, wow, that's not too fun to have coming down the board like a steam train. He can cash in with potentially c3 check, pawn c3 check, and if king a3, then that allows rook. This type of interesting play here is if white blunders there, of course, it's a double question mark. Oops, come on, double question mark blunder. So of course you see this move. Stop if you want to see if you see the mate. There's mate 1. If you said rook takes a5, you're right on the money there. Great job. Couldn't help that one with such a straightforward KO that you gotta love it. You have to do those combinations when they come for you to you. But white has been planning to give up his bishop, and then he when he had to. Basically, if we went c3, the bishop would sack itself for the pawns, and well, it'd be an equal position at that point. Somewhat, it's kind of what they're saying. That is, if this happens, then the bishop would take, pawn takes, queen takes, and you get something similar to this type of setup where, yes, white's down in exchange, but white does have 3 pawns for the minor piece. So, and there's really no open spots for the rooks or the bishops to infiltrate into. So this is really closed. This would be good for white. It would be equal, basically. So there's everything would be okay. All's good. The knight eventually would want to come back to e3 and then come into d5 like that. And then this would be its optimum placement. And we would basically seal everything up, create a fortification, and look for the right moment to strike. Sometimes in some positions there it's drawn, even though there's tons of breaks, but keep pushing. Like what we learned from what Bobby Fischer told that one grandmaster, that the grandmaster was up a pawn, and he's like, he said, how do you think my game went? He says, you are up a pawn, right? And the grandmaster said, yeah, I was up a pawn. He says, you should have pushed, even if it was a drawn position. Still push. What do you have to lose? Your opponent may slip up, make a mistake. Then you emphasize that mistake and win, and you've turned a draw into a win. The worst that the worst that could happen is a draw at that point. So keep pushing a little bit. I know easier said than done, especially when you're tired and maybe you might slightly at that tournament be under the weather. I know, and so it's up to you to decide if you feel like pushing, but always try to go for the KO if you can. So let's see here. Okay, let's see. After that, okay. So c3 was played at this point. Bishop takes. So this actually was played here. So we did do that. All right. Okay. And wow. The rook to c8 was actually played here. This one here. That's interesting. That's an exclam move. I think the idea is to try to pry open the even if you had to sacrifice another rook to get all your forces flooding in. After that, king takes, queen takes. Once this falls, the queen could actually come in here. So these two spots are pretty vulnerable to an attack. c2, after c2 falls, then b3 will fall, and it's surprisingly black's now the one with the pass pawn. That's pretty impressive. I did not even think about that move. Wow. That's an interesting continuation. Whoa. Yeah. Black prepares to take on c3 under much better circumstances than pawn takes. So, like what we just talked about, if bishop retreats back here, the rook comes smashing down into the position, crunch. And if the king takes, then smash, in comes the queen. And then if the rook here, in comes your rook. And then with bishop, intercepts, rook takes, check. And then if the king comes up, queen checkmate on c2. So the only thing that could happen would be queen takes, and now the tide has turned. And yes, white has two rooks, but one of them's about to fall. And so if you play there, you pluck off another pawn with check, and if he comes up, then what you do is you can actually check here if he comes there, and then you can even play d3 here. Really an impressive move. King up to try to stop that. Check. If king there, check, king over, and then say hello to checkmate. Yeah, that is really an interesting position. So bishop d2 is totally out of the question at this point. So the only move that's really left is bishop takes d4. This is the only really continuation. It's an exclam move, so this was a really strong move. White had to realize that they're not going to be winning material. They're not going to be able to really pocket a pawn. If they pocket a pawn, they're going to be going down in flames, basically. The game was, it's going to be forcing. Black will play bang, bang c2 if bishop d2. Rook takes c2, king takes c2, queen takes b3, and of course the forcing lines happen. And you know what? It's always fun to get those type of games that you get to have those forcing, smashing move of checkmates. But sometimes we have to remember that we can't always do. I like playing the Garry Kasparov attacker's chess type of stuff. But remember, sometimes you have to go Karpovian. You have to build up and then basically exercise the position or execute the position at that point. So just keep that in mind. Try to be a balanced player. And so you may not like the attacker's type of, the positional type of thing, but if it calls for it, you got to go into it. The board calls to it. The pawn took here, so e takes d. Black played that and then got an exclam too. Because you think about it, there you're saying, wait, aren't you allowing white to win another pawn? But remember, your position is so much better than your opponent's at this point. You also could play after that queen to e2. And then you're just winning. So if you were thinking after this move, rook takes, check. That's a good. That's okay. Takes. Queen takes b3, check. King d2. Bishop b4, check. King e3. Bishop takes queen, bishop takes queen. White can hold for quite a while by playing rook h takes d, and he's got a fortress, and then you take here, knight takes. This would be hard to break down for black, but it's still winning. I gotta say, this is still a winning position, so it's not like it's losing. It's just, why make your life any harder than it needs to be, right? And that's kind of why they played, black played that. But this would be a hard one to actually spot for, once again, we have a situation in, let's see here, right here. Once again, we have a situation in which black should win because of the superior amount of material. A queen versus a rook and some pawns. But he would have to navigate slowly, perhaps, with queen to b4, e, b1, queen c5, rotates b5, and then queen to c3, and cannot force your opponent's not forced to resign for many more moves to come. So your opponent still has hope. There's still play, and it's not over yet. So black looked at that variation and said, that's way too complex, so I'm just going to take the pawn. But black still threatens the same idea of rook takes c2, even though there's this move, and the attack can still come. And if white played queen d2 here, but I know what you're thinking. What if knight here, right? There's queen e5 pins, and then if c3, then you actually have the idea of b4, and you're undermining the knight. And if queen here takes, check, he goes in front. And then now you do something called a cross pin. You gotta love that. You gotta love this. And there's no way to, the only way to hold would be rook a4. And then you play a really interesting move. You actually play rook takes a5 here. I was looking at this move here. Rook takes a5 is really interesting because you take back and then bishop takes here, and so is actually that would be losing. I'm sorry. I thought that might not be what we want. I was looking at it and looked at first glance like it actually works. Maybe the simple bishop e8 is actually a better continuation. And then if then you just retreat back here. Oh, wait a second. You don't have to retreat. Just take it. Kaboom. Silly me. So b4 is a blunder. Rook slides over. Not king there. We don't want to do king f7 because of the pin. So we'll play. Yeah. No, that still is not the best move. King d8. Yeah, we found the right one now. King d8 is a strong move. Because now if he plays here, you can take with the queen and the bishop's protected. And the rook's under fire, so rook here has to be played. Now bishop b5. If knight takes, of course, the queen falls. So yeah, that's there's some interesting continuations there. So knight e5 is a pretty good one here. b4 to cement white's passed a pawn. So now it's a cemented passed a pawn. Remember, black's still up I think for, let me see, how many pawns? For 2 pawns, black's up a piece. Minor piece, so he's still up 1 pawn, black is. So white has to justify their sacrifice. Rook c3. And doubling up rooks will actually come in handy really good. f4. Queen c7. Queen f2. And now if rook to c8, if rook c8, you have it's actually the fastest of the wins. And there's really not many ways to go wrong. So like if here this potentially is an interesting idea, and then if takes here, and you win a rook, you win the queen. So if maybe rook there, maybe bishop back to a4 at this point. If rook takes, then you take there, and then maybe bishop takes, and you have unstoppable mate here with the queen there. Yeah, I can see what they're saying about this being a totally one position after this move here. Yeah, Black's totally winning. There's so many different winning lines that you can go down. So let's head in and do another one. Set up another one. Okay, pawns first, then pieces. Okay, we're good so far. Oops, I forgot the king. And the pawn needs to go over there. Okay. Let's try. Let's do it to it. $19.95. Yep. Wait to move. Perfect. There we go. Oops. 1 second. Hold on. Somehow that got turned off. 1 second. I have to AFK for a second. That was weird. Sorry about that, team. I have no idea what happened there. Somehow that got, I'm gonna have to do it again. Oh, wait a second. Oh, no, I don't. What am I saying? Let's come here. We already got it set up. Yep. There we go. Perfect. So it was a blessing that we had that set up. Okay. Okay, black has just moved a knight to d7. And then and what we could actually do is actually black's idea is to sometimes go to knight to b6. Our for white, our knight bishop to b6 could be played for white. I mean, but he failed to notice that bishop a6 is still possible. Black forgot that move. Forgot to notice that move. And if you saw bishop b6, you are 100% right here. Splendid move, my friends. Great job, Team Chess Cruncher, if you saw that. Great work. Knight takes, and then surprisingly, the queen is almost trapped. Knight b3, exclaim here. The queen's within the lines of being trapped. Black's queen isn't trapped, but if it escapes to a3, he can then play. Then he'd be able to take white would be able to take the knight on b6, forking. So the only way to save the queen, if you were thinking about saving it, was here. And then the problem is one of these rooks are going to fall here. And you would probably want to take this rook here, so that the rook would come off to the side there. And now you're up in exchange. So what black saw that and then just decided that it wouldn't be worth it. So he played knight takes d5 here. Exclaim. Knight takes the queen. Knight takes. Oops. Not knight takes that. It's knight to c3. And this is a exclam move. Black made a heavy, judgment rather than, the queen move. He did this move. Instead of being the exchange down, he preferred to give up a lot more material A queen for 2 minor pieces. What was he thinking? He was thinking that both material disadvantage down exchange are giving up the queen for 2 pieces are not enough. It's losing. But there is a practical difference in this scenario. His opponent would have an elemental task of winning with an extra exchange. So white does have an ability for an extra exchange. So his opponent would have an elemental task of winning with an extra exchange. So let's see what was played. Okay. In this line here, if you're wondering about this, this is still winning as well. But winning wouldn't be roughly as easy. After this here, the knight takes. The position, black has an excellent positional trump, such as the knight potentially being able to go to c3 here would be huge. And the targets on c3 c4. White should win, but the process requires a lot more thinking. So they did not do that. They actually went down this route here. They played knight takes c6. Exclam. This one is a tougher one for the average player, as the learner. I call it the learner player, the player who's wanting to improve, or the improving player, to see, because you're giving up your queen. For you're thinking you just want a queen. What? Knight takes, d1 is forced. Queen, knight takes, check. King f8. Knight takes c8. And now white is in exchange and a pawn ahead, and would have another easy a task. But knight takes on b2. So for instance, if rook were to take at this point, rook takes c8, f takes, the knight would be an exchange up. Then bishop takes rook a c1. Or if bishop takes here, rook a b1 with the idea of attacking the pawn there. Bishop e5. And then rook takes b7. No better. If rook takes, if king e7, rook a b1, bishop takes, rook d c1, bishop e6, rook takes, bishop takes, and then bishop to g4. And this basically, this is an exclam move here, because you're forced to exchange off, and black's gonna be in trouble being exchanged down. So basically that's why black didn't go down that route. So knight to b6. Rook a7. Knight ab1. His task is fairly simple, and black decided to end matters with a5. Rook fc1. Bishop d4. Then rook c2, and black resigned at this point. White's in a completely winning position here. Had white chosen b takes c, the back here, what we were talking about here. Let's see. B takes c. By playing for at least 10 more moves than he did in the game, and some of his decisions would be difficult at this point. This would be hugely difficult. You're up material, but after knight takes, is it winning or not winning? The position still is uncertain, very chaotic, and you might even be going down the route your opponent wants. Some opponents love chaotic positions to play in, and this may make your opponent really happy. Potentially you can actually take on c4, bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4, and then potentially even lock down the position with b5. So like if black was able to get here, if black was able to take here, and we'll say that white took there and then the bishop took, black could actually play that, lock down this bishop, and there's nothing that's going to be entering the position at that point. Even though you're down a tremendous amount of material, you're still not winning. White's still not in a fully winning position. You're out material, that's it. Okay, let's see how we're doing on some time here. Perfect, we have enough, and we're able to start another section in our book, so that's going to be fun. Yeah, this is a game. White is Vishy Anand versus Moritz Avage, and so this should be a really good game. Two really strong grandmasters to learn from. They understand the concepts of making their position easier to play than complex, even though you're up material, and it's still not worth it if you're not going to, I mean, a tremendous amount of material if you can't win it. So just keep that in your forefront when you're thinking of a position. Even if you win a queen, am I in a fully winning position? Are the moves easy for me? Can I go down a line like what I think white did in the prior game about winning all that material and sacrificing back his queen, but being up in exchange and a pawn? It was much easier to play for white at that point. Much easier. And that's the whole thing about chess is it's checkmate, yes, like what we talk about all the time, but it's making your play as simple so you don't blunder as you can. And that's one thing that I guess I would like to share with you, to keep the position simple but complex for your opponent, which means make their moves more difficult and your moves less difficult to choose from. Gary did that one last night when we went over the Gary versus Karpov game, one of the World Championship games they were going down. I believe it was game 4. I think it was 1989. If I'm remembering, it might be 88, but I think it's 89. And it was Gary played a move that allowed him to do 5 moves back to back without even thinking, and Karpov had to deal with each one of those. It's not fun to have that much of complexity that you have to go down. And I remember what we read, that Karpov said 0 for 20 more seconds on his clock. He said that it may have been a different story in that game. Alright. Let's make that into a study. Because the kings haven't moved, I made it so that there would be castling chances for both sides. Make sure I have all their spelling right. Yep. Okay, we're going to look at it from Black's perspective. Okay. Reduced 3 results to 2. Reduce 3 results to 2. That's the name of the section inside of Easier. Chapter 7, subsection, reduce 3 results to 2. Basically, win or draw. That's what they're saying about a 2 result. A 3 result would be win, draw, or loss. So when you hear the commentators like Maurice Ashley, Jennifer Shahade, let's say Jennifer Yazzer and Maurice, you can and you hear them like Yazzer saying there's a 3 now, because that one player they would say like Black moved this, now it's a 3 result game. Before it would have been a 2 result game. Now you see what it means. 3 results: win, draw, or loss. 2 result is win or draw for you, or a 2 result for your opponent would be a draw or a loss. So you want the 2 results to be a win or a draw, not a draw or a loss. So another annotators love is the results. 3 results are possible term. This is their way of saying the position is question. The question isn't a doubt. It's double-edged, but either player could win, or the game could end up as a draw. Alternately, a player will say he avoided a particular line of play because only 2 results were possible, and that's not good. That's what he said. So in this position here, this one at hand, Anon's black and Morisevich is Anon's white. Yeah, Anon's white and Morisevich is black. Black said he considered playing d takes c4 for a long time, with the likely continuation of bishop takes c4, b5, and then pawn push to c5. But he rejected. It probably leads to a middle game where only 2 results are possible. In other words, he was afraid that if he liquidated his tension, only white would have winning chances thanks to the greater space and the two bishops. The best black could hope for is a draw. He felt he left the center tension intact with bishop to e7, increasing the number of possible results is a stock in trade of is a stock in trade of masters when they are black and play a weaker player. To appreciate what's involved, players play through Grandmaster's games such as Morishevich when he has black are just look at how masters handle black in the second or third round of a large Swiss tournament. They are paired against lower rated players but not easily beatable opponents. They manage to maximize winning chances while minimizing the chances of a 3 result with a loss as the third result. There's another skill to be learned. Reducing the number of results from 3 to 2, a draw and a win. This can often be done in a way that makes your future decision making easier. So this is what they were talking about here. That they considered this move here. And then after bishop d3, c5 here. And he rejected this because if this were to open up, there's 2 results. White stands better actually here because soon they'll potentially play bishop here, castle queenside, and then play king, maybe even to b1, and then get that more activity. Morishevich didn't like this type of setup for himself, so he played actually bishop e7 here. This is what was actually played in the game, bishop e7. He kept the tension, kept the center closed, and he actually won at this point. He won the game at this point. Not at this point, but he eventually won against Anon in the game. This one move kept 3 results possible. The other move would have made it so that Morishevich would have been in a 2 result, but it would have been a draw or a loss for him. And he didn't want to go down that route. Okay, so let's see how we're doing on time. I think we're actually good. Yep. Let's see. Do we have enough time for one more? I think we do. Let's give it a go. Yeah, let's do one more. One more for the road. One more. I was thinking about calling it, but then I'm like, nah. You gotta love it. I love chess, and so I'm like, I'll do one more. I know I probably should, but I love it, so. Now let's see, what do we got here? Okay. Perfect. It's black to move. So then we don't have to worry about castling because they are already in. We're probably in an endgame right at this moment, anyways. So this is a Spassky game. Alright, black to move. Oops, come on. After black played rook to f1, white had a lot to consider. He could have invested time in checking out queen moves such as queen takes b7, but he needed to calculate them. Black was probably was thinking of something like actually what was played here was queen takes f8 exclam. So I have to go back and we'll go over the line that white was thinking about. Takes here, excuse me, queen e2 e3 check, and then and of course there was also bishop takes f3, g takes f3, rook g8, or after, yeah, then the queen queen east e3 is what we were thinking about. It's convincing that white could even get mated if he overlooks certain lines. So Spassky, who's white, said, forget all that. I am 2 moves away from queening with my d-pawn. Why not just win a rook and, consolidate? Queen takes. F takes g4 was a mistake. White doesn't have to see that far, but there's a question mark. I don't understand why there's a question mark. Doesn't see that far at all to play this with confidence. He might have noticed that d7 looks strong. He might also have seen if d7 doesn't win quickly, he has an alternate move of rook to f1 that's followed by f6 that could potentially come into play, and something like that could actually, in the case there's virtually no chance for black to win. Only 2 results are possible. Oops, oh yeah. Queen d8, and then d7, king g8, knight takes f6 exclam. Really beautiful move by Spassky. King f8, and then knight to e4. king e7, knight to d6 here. Black resigned in view of knight takes b7, and if queen takes d7 here, then knight f5, and then the king moves, and then the rook takes, and Spassky's the one now that's up a material advantage. Of course, back to this point right here, I'm going to take off the question mark. I don't know why there was a question mark there, because I don't think it was a bad move. Of course, Boris Spassky could calculate well enough to check out all variations after f takes g4 until they reached a white wins end. But often there are simply too many lines that too many moves into the future to count out and evaluate. Reduce the number of results become more important as inability to calculate, as your inability to calculate with certain increases. Consider the next okay, we'll do this one tomorrow. Basically what they're saying is, if you don't have to calculate out 30, 40, or 50 moves. All you have to do is be able to evaluate, is this a 2 result, 3 result game? And sometimes it's a 1 result game when you're totally winning. So we'll do a quick little refresher, and then then I'll say adieu. Okay, we talked about easy equivalents of positional moves. So the most easiest moves are like if you're in check and every move that you play is a forcing check that you have to move. Of course you got to get checkmated. We looked at that. And sometimes there's moves that you have like 17 different types of moves or beyond. And sometimes there's at least 18 moves inside of each one of those moves that you have to consider. Just pick one and play as simplest move as you can. Don't go complex. And then let's see, our next one is reduce the results from 3 to 2. What that means is we've got to see in a game between Anon as white and Morozevich as black that he didn't trade off that pawn. He thought about it. Then he realized that because Vichy had 2 bishops, that if he opened up the center, it would actually end up in Vichy's favor, because of the 2 bishops are stronger in an open center. So Morozevich basically played bishop to e7, held the position, and ended up I'll go to the game really quick so you can see, because I can see it in my head right here, but I just want to show you. He, rather than go down this line here, which is actually 2 results for white, which is a win or a draw, Morozevich decided to dismiss that and play bishop e7. Keep the position closed, whereas knights are better, and then slowly implement his energy in the position, and he ended up beating Vichy in this game. And like Boris, also we'll take a look at what we're talking about here. At this point, after the rook for Boris' opponent played rook f8, Boris could have went down the line of queen takes b7, all these different queen moves. He realized that just taking and then queen takes, and then the queen has to go in front of the pawn. This is a result of 2. That it's a draw or a loss for black. He changed the result because of d7. That now white's the only one with forcing moves, easy play. So just keep that in your forefront when it comes down, when you have maybe 30 or 40 minutes in an hour and a half game. Your opponent's got an hour, maybe an hour 20, or maybe you're only 15 minutes difference. Just think about, do you make the most simplest and easy moves that you can? But remember, my teacher told me, don't do a plan that's going to hurt your position. If it doesn't hurt your position, but it makes your moves a lot easier to play, go down that. It may not be the best, because remember, we are not computers. We're not a computer engine. We're not Alpha Zero. Alpha Zero. Okay, our Leela, learning engine. So just play your best, have fun always, and keep pushing forward, like we always talk about. Okay, now that we did our rehabs on that, you know what? The results, there's really only two results. Like when we talk about there's the three goes down to two. There's two results in life when you're dealing with Jesus Christ. It's to receive Him as Lord and Savior or not. And I pray that you take the result of receiving Him as Lord and Savior, because there is really no three results of putting it off, because one day we have to deal with that decision. And I pray that you do make the decision to receive Him as Lord and Savior. And so that when we've looked at through what it takes to become a chess master is that it's not about how far you can see. It's about, can you see a plan that's the most straightforward and simple to play. Don't make your life more miserable over the board than you have to. If there's a simple line that, like we saw in one of the games, that he gave back his queen, but he was up an exchange and a pawn, and the player ended up winning. See, it's not about material. It's about checkmate and winning in chess on the board. So if he would have kept the queens on the board, then his game would have been more harder to play, because there'd be more pieces for black to use to lock down the position. That's why we have to take what Bruce Lee says, take what you know and then apply it, and then be willing to do something with it. And remember, you may at first hand, this may be really hard for you to do, which you'll hit a plateau. Don't fear, my friends. Just keep going, keep learning, don't doubt. Team Chess Cruncher is here. We're here for you, okay? And that's why the Team Chess Cruncher motto is in place, of hanging up your coats, of hanging up your hats, and sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, and Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow, and we'll keep pushing forward. Excuse me, there was a little tickle there. And remember to, like Hannibal Smith, even inside of a random position, my friends, there's always a plan. And when you find it, you get to say, I love it when a plan comes together. But make the plan as simple and straightforward as you can. And always remember, chess is fun. Learn from your mistakes and keep pushing forward like on Meet the Robinsons, okay? 2 thumbs up. Hoorah. Go Team Chess Cruncher. Be blessed. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, team.